Welcome and thank you for clicking on my video. I apologize for not making a video last night, but it turned out the reason that I had to get off the live stream fast was my wife said something was going on, and apparently for the first time ever I had car trouble that I never have experienced before. Someone tried to hotwire my car yesterday, apparently very early in the morning, so we had to deal with that. We're still dealing with that a little bit, but that doesn't mean that the market sleeps, right? So today we are going to get into some technical analysis, and we are going to be focusing on some things here. And the main three things I really want to focus on is I think some questions that I think are justified and so forth for a lot of people that have been discussing stocks with me. And the first thing we really want to tackle was like, hey, can buyers take back control here? And that's something we are going to seriously look at. When is the selling overall going to stop, and can buyers take control? And we might be at one of those moments very soon. So we'll look at that first, create an argument for that. How high, the second point, how high could the SPY or QQQ go if buyers do take control? And this is going to be very important and maybe even tie into what signal would show up in selling continuation. And those are three things that we're going to tackle in this video. We're going to really try to look at this and go in that order. So at the beginning of this video, we're first going to be talking about, can those buyers take back control, and look at some signals across the board, and then we'll get to those other 2 points. Let's get into it. First thing we do want to point out here is the fact that we are now outside of the monthly expected move, and as of today and yesterday we have seen 2 tags outside of the weekly expected move, and that does suggest that by Friday close we can close back in those weekly expected moves with a 68% chance to do so and a 32% chance to see something crazy. But at the same time, the monthly is suggesting by the end of March we could end up going into that 68% zone that's circled there on your screen. These are calculations using the options data, so there are hard numbers to really go about this, and you're experiencing one of those 32% times now, but are we going to experience this at the end of the month? And so something that we're paying attention to here are the reversal signals, and if you really look at the SPY from these reversal signals, you're not necessarily noticing the best things, right? We notice that it does have a 2-hour divergence down here on your RSI. You can see it's holding the original point, but it just gave it up. So we might need some double dips down in these areas, right? We had great signals in here for a bounce and they failed. And we're going to talk about how this could fail even if buyers step back in. But something I wanted to point out here was something that we did in the past that I think is very helpful is for the SPY. I want to talk about this August 5th again. And around these areas, we were talking about how that put volume was showing those spikes. And right at this bar, we saw that put volume spike and we see it now. So that really tells us that we could be approaching a bottom, but look at the mess that had to happen first. Now, this has been a downward move. This move was about 9.5%. You know what you're at now? 9.5%. So very interesting to be there. But around this area, we actually used other stocks to tell us if they were going to have a high probability to bounce, and one of those stocks was NVDA. So at the beginning of this, if we're going to see if buyers can take control and the SPY isn't showing the best, it still has one, but not the best reversal signals at this point, then maybe we need to pay attention to a few individual stocks and talk about those for a second. And before we talk about those individual stocks, the Qs are seeing the same thing, right? Outside of the monthly, 68% chance to land in there. Outside of the weekly, 68% chance to land in here by Friday, close of this week. So pretty crazy. And showing a similar divergence to the SPY where you violated all the ones here. So we do want to be open to more complexity going forward. And we'll talk about that in a bit. And that would be more so if this overall is going to fail. And we will pay attention to that. We will get into that in a moment, but I just wanted to show you how the Qs are in a similar standpoint, and we're going to go over daily expected moves, but you know those are always in red on this channel. Thank you so much if you're new here. Red is always the daily expected moves if you want to get those on your chart. But one of the stocks I wanted to talk about, at least the first one, was Amazon. Amazon is really nice here because you'll see this a lot in a bear market where a divergence gets violated, but it holds the original point. And here's the thing about Amazon. This, not like the SPY or the Qs, actually held every divergence point so far, and you got that confirmation. This is suggesting that Amazon could potentially be putting in a bottom right Now, isn't that interesting? So looking at Amazon, a pretty big stock here with a daily chart that looks like it's been going down for a while and it's oversold in a buy zone right now, holding a low that you definitely want to hold. Coming below these areas does invite a lower high. We'll talk about that in a moment with these. But for this stock, you are seeing a big stock with reversal signals on the 2-hour, and that's the main thing here. On the 30-minute, we want to be aware another curl down is possible, but you actually made that divergence today, really trying to confirm that divergence, and bam, to the upside, we start to see tags of the 5-day. This is where rejections can come in, so we want to be aware if that's reversing down, but the 2-hour here is showing great divergence, so this is suggesting, hey, buyers can take control here, and that's awesome, right? Because we're paying attention to it. We see monthly and weekly expected moves. I'm sure Patreon members are paying very close attention to their monthly and weekly expected moves for Amazon, because this is a great signal and you're holding the tapering. So there is nothing wrong with this at this point. Sure, the MACD is violating one of them, but the RSI is holding it the whole time. So I really like it. Another one that we can look at is we want to see if multiple stocks are showing this, right? NVDA, I think NVIDIA looks really, really nice here. You have confirmed 2-hour divergence. We have failed to take back the 5 at this moment, but you did get a good confirmation of that divergence, and really this thing isn't speeding up with the selling, and that's big, but you do have that divergence, and just like Amazon, we held pretty much all the divergence points between these and even tapered off even more. So NVIDIA is suggesting I can see that upward move, and the thing about the daily is you still have this flat divergence on the RSI that can launch you to higher levels. Still want to be aware of lower highs. Very, very nice. As we're at the 5-day, we haven't taken that back. Notice we have ridden that 5-day all the way down. So we really want to make sure that's taken back, right? We can always get rejections from there. And that's where most of the time people who are trying to apply short positions after a big drop, usually they will double down on those around or start their position around that 5-day moving average. So we could see a little bit come in here. We do get data in the morning. So we have a lot of things, but the signals here are suggesting that NVIDIA could head to the upside, and we have a large amount of implied volatility tomorrow. Let's talk about NVIDIA's little cousin, right? NVIDIA's little cousin giving you potential double bottom. Now, we want to be careful because AMD hasn't been the best with its signals. These things fade all the time. We looked at that lackluster buying, and we were like, hey, there's 30-minute divergence. Watch out if the 2-hour crosses. It crossed and saw something awful, right? So we're paying attention to both directions, but right now you have a 2-hour divergence suggesting, hey, we could be forming a double bottom here, and maybe this sees some upside, right? This has not confirmed yet, but this is one that is very interesting. If AMD would actually participate, a little bit of a sketchy one there. But Meta is a big one, and just like Amazon, it violated both divergences actually, so a little bit worse than Amazon. It violated both divergences. We have to be aware if that's going to fail again. But for the question of can buyers take back control here, well, yes, they can. Why? Because the selling is becoming weak. We are seeing these RSIs show tons of divergence at this point. Now, that does mean if these fail, they can head in the downward direction, but as of right now, it's a sign that the bulls can take back control. Now, we look at this kind of lackluster buying still below the 5. Be aware of the drop down, but very, very nice. We can go look at a few other big stocks like Microsoft showing that divergence as well, holding it all the way on the RSI. Looks like it wants a bounce. Google, we can see that that is a very dramatic divergence, and Google looks like it's about to get some kind of rip to the upside. You can even go look at things like AMC and GME and see divergences forming. We can look at GME and see divergences potentially forming here for these stocks. So the reason I'm pointing this out is because, yes, the SPY is not showing the best signals, but a lot of stocks within the market are showing those reversal signals down by monthly or weekly expected moves, which would highly suggest that buyers have a great ability with this type of look to see some upside and take back control of this market. So we will see what happens over the next few days, make sure things are confirming and trading like water. And then we immediately have to think of, well, if this thing is going to see more upside, then exactly how high or low, or actually, since we're talking about upside, how high could the SPY or the Qs go if buyers do take control? And that's what we're going to tackle right now. Okay, so we see for the question, can the buyers take back control? Well, we're outside of the weekly and outside of the monthly, right? Those immediately, if we have time to get to the end of the month and to get to the end of the week, those immediately should be flashing to us, and we should be looking for what? Those reversal signals. And we see those reversal signals in some big cap stocks that are showing those divergences at either weekly or monthly expected moves for those stocks as well. If you're part of Patreon, we actually showed that off before the market closed today. So if you want to join the Patreon so you can see those videos during market hours, be very, very nice. But these are two big things that, and we could add more to this, right? There's more stuff to add to this. People are very bearish. We're in fear and greed. We could pile onto this, but the important things that we're paying attention to are stocks price action. And these are the 2 points that I think we really need to be watching, and then look for those confirmations. But can buyers take back control here? It looks like the answer is overall a yes. I mean, they can. They definitely have that ability right now. Now, how high could the SPY go if buyers do take control? And don't forget, towards the end of this video, we're going to be talking about how this thing could fail, right? Even if we get an upward move, we're going to talk about some ways that this could fail. How high could the SPY or Qs go if buyers do take control? And for this week, this is pretty simple. If buyers are going to extremely take control all of a sudden this week, even though we have tons of data, and I highly suspect that this is improbable, for this week, we would assume, hey, if buyers do step in, they could get to 594.09 by the end of the week. So that is very, very interesting. Now, something we have to understand about the SPY and about all those other stocks we looked at is we do not have good signals on the MACD for the SPY. So we could see some kind of 2-hour move, completely give up that move, and then see something, really close to the end of the week, right? We get some rip around kind of behavior or a higher low, right? So this area here might be important, 585, to see that 2-hour pull back down. But ultimately, if the buyers are fully able to take control, then that would mean the daily chart. The daily chart is what we want to be watching here. See if that thing can turn up, because all of these things have 2-hour divergence. Where do we want to watch out for? Well, you want to watch out for this low that did hold as resistance, right? We see that level there of about 577. It looks like an area where the first bit of resistance really could come in. You really probably have a zone of resistance in these areas, but the daily chart, if that's able to actually curl up, that most likely would be curling up past that level, and you might see that extended move. And where I really want to pay attention is starting at about 598. Pretty much, actually, it would be starting at 590 all the way up to here, right? This is a big zone, but we can see how the market could bounce all the way up to there with everyone's bearishness, get really bullish, and then all of a sudden we just curl back down. And I mainly want to be paying attention to if the daily MACD is turning down by the center line and has 2-hour divergence above it. Those are some things that we will be watching out for, but this really does look like we can see a strong move. And the first point I'd be paying attention to is probably this low around 575, and then I'd be looking at that weekly expected move. But ultimately, I think we could even see the buyers push us all the way into this zone. If we break through that zone, we are obviously going to be going to all-time highs. And I don't want to take off the table that this could be some kind of fake out, just like back over here where we ended up getting faked out, and then we turn back to the upside. We test the resistance just below the high, filling a gap. We see a pullback, and then we go to all-time highs. So we will be watching out for these things, but it looks like to me, if bears take control, they can see a great move that could potentially make a new all-time high if they're able to see enough good things happen over time. And that's the truth of it. That's how these things really work. Now, I think it is more likely for us to see a lower high in some way based on the positioning of the MACD. So I kind of have to talk like that until it changes, because I'm overall just stating what the MACD is telling me in these videos. So how high could the SPY or the Qs go? The question there is kind of up in the air, because you could see that lower high if that daily turns up, and you could see this build up and be able to make new all-time highs if we're able to hold up better. As of right now, it looks like a lower high would be the more likely thing in these areas. Okay, so now we're seeing that buyers can take back control. We actually see signals, and we're actually seeing things like monthly expected moves, weekly expected moves, where buyers could step in. Big cap stop has those reversal signals, so yes, it seems they could. How high could it go? Hey, we talked about that on the daily scale if that is going to fail, but let's talk about it on all these time frames, right? We really should be paying attention to the shortest time frame first when we're answering a question of what would a signal that would suggest that this is failing or a sell signal start to come in for this. And that's where we pull up the 30-minute chart for the SPY. The SPY, if you notice this for the MACD down here, we do not show that divergence. And I'm going to tell you right now, everyone talking about bear market, and we have a bunch of volatility this week, and we have a bunch of data this week. During those bear markets, the majority, heavy majority of the time, you had 30-minute divergence outside of the weekly. So I think we really need to be aware of this for tomorrow. And that's where we can talk about daily expected moves. 568.43 to the upside, and we do see 543, 443 would have been crazy. 543.41 to the downside. So something we'll be aware early on is, hey, if that 30 minutes crossing, right, then we're taking out the low, going to make a new one, and we'll have to see what happens. But something we also want to be aware of is the fact that all of these rips get dropped, right? Rip, sell, rip, sell. So if this is a small rip, this could be a sell potentially right now. But what if we're creating that little microstructure to actually head to a daily expected move at 568.43, and we're going to use the monthly expected move and the daily expected move as resistance, right? This line, once you cross through it, it can become resistance. So what we want to be watching here on the 30-minute is if we go up to that 5-day moving average, we're starting to pile on how this 30-minute could fail, right? Serious resistance with a yellow line, good resistance with the daily line in red. And then we have the 5-day. What's happened at the 5-day throughout this run? Bad freaking things. So a different thing would be to take back that 5-day moving average, wouldn't it? So if this is going to fail early on tomorrow, on the 30-minute, I suspect that we would see some kind of upside move that then curls us back down, right? Really fakes people out. People are like, yes, this is it. This is the bottom. We're finally, and then that crosses back down. So something we'll watch for is if the 30-minute does ever curl back down into negative territory on this MACD, because when that does happen, it does suggest that lower prices than the previous low are very possible. We can see this curl up, take out this low. If it rejects back off it, curl it down, take out this low, maybe even go make a new one. And that's where we might have to keep our eye on 543.41, which after this drop, the lowest I really saw us going was 540. So very interesting here, but something to pay attention to. This is a way that the 30-minute could fail what is going on right now. And I think that that's the most likely thing to pay attention to if we are going to see this fail, right? So the 2-hour. The 2-hour, we can see this plain and simple for the SPY. We see that the 2-hour is far away from that center line. And if that would see a good move to even go fill that gap, maybe get up to these levels on Friday. Well, if we see that sell come in on Friday, maybe early on next week, we do dip down one more time. Remember that this line won't change this weekend because it's looking for that close at the end of the month. So we could have more complex corrective moves before we're able to actually base out. And we want to be aware of that. And the level that I'd be paying attention to for this is about 576. I think if we're able to get to this point of 585, we most likely will be seeing a strong enough move back into the monthly expected move to actually see this thing build back with a higher low. So the way that this would overall reject and fail to see lower prices for the SPY, I believe would be a rejection towards that 575 level. And now we know, hey, okay, now we know a 30-minute one. Okay, the 30-minute looks good. Okay, now we know a 2-hour one. And then we have the daily one. And the daily is going to be very interesting because we have to take our time and see if this is actually curling up. We're probably going to see a lot of things from 2-hour and 30-minute charts before then. But I can tell you right now, this is the resistance we're looking at 575.50, and that just adds more credibility to that 575 for the 2-hour. But if the daily is able to curl up to there, once you get past that level, you're most likely curling up a daily chart, unless it's just sporadic, right? So we'll pay attention to how much V-shape this is, but understand that the little zone up here, there's a little zone with this gap that I want to be paying attention to in these areas still, and that we could get rejection from that level and still set up a lower high. We want to be paying attention to if we're coming up to that level, right? Are we coming up to that level and getting a pullback? Are we coming up to that level, getting a 2-hour pullback and curling back back up, or are we coming up to that level and then curling down on a daily, suggesting lower prices? And you notice that would take you into the end of the month, which you'd get new updated monthly expected moves. And if you end down here and we keep the same volatility, well, then that would overall say the SPY in that month, the next month, which would be April, could end up at like 530. So we really want to be watching for rejections. And now we know about rejections that could happen on the 30, rejections that could happen on the 2 hour, and what we're looking for if we get that lower high. So we're aware of the risks of this turning back down. But most of the time you will see some kind of bounce, right? Some kind of dead cat bounce or a full recovery. And our job is just to pay attention to the signals and see what's failing, see what's holding good, and then make decisions accordingly and try to make the best decision possible. At this point, we see that the daily scale for the Qs as well, we already kind of talked about a little bit about this level. Really like this area still for the lower high for the Qs, paying attention to the exact same things as the SPY, right? Paying attention to if this curls up, then curls back down, we can still see bad things into April, right? With new updated monthly expected moves that we will put out on Patreon at the end of this month. If you want the current monthly expected moves for all the individual stocks we do cover, you can get that down in the links in the description with Patreon. So what we're paying attention to with the daily is still that lower high. Okay, awesome. If it's going to be a lackluster move, then we probably want to watch out for that whole number of about 500. But if you can react up to these levels, I think you're building up pretty well, and you might see that get all the way back up to almost the breakdown, which was towards about 530. So let's look at the 2 hour. How could the 2 hour fail? Well, it's very similar to the SPY. We have divergence on the RSI. We just don't have it on the MACD. So if we need to make it, we might see a strong move to fill a gap and then curl back down, right? And we could do all of this going on into this week, and maybe even on Friday we just see something like that, right? We'll be paying attention to it, but we need to be aware that if we get rejection somewhere around this level of 491, maybe even for the Qs, we want to pay attention to the rejection at 500 if it's a sporadic move, right? If it's a crazy move, we need to watch for that rejection. But if that would reject, we really want to pay attention if that's negative or positive, right? And we want to be watching our 30-minute, because the 30 minutes what we're going to be watching for tomorrow for the most part, right? We can see how this is curled up. We can see how it's still negative, so that's a big problem. Yeah, it had 15-minute divergence, but I don't really care about 15-minute charts, to be totally honest. I want to see it on a 30-minute chart, and I don't see them at the same time. I don't like rejection divergence. I want to see it. So levels we can pay attention to for tomorrow are 484.54 to the upside, and we do have 458.66 to the downside. So pretty big move again. Actually, I think even bigger. I think we have bigger implied volatility, at least right now, right? If this was at higher prices, we'd be seeing some bigger moves even than this. So what we want to really watch for is, do we see rejection towards these levels, towards that gap resistance, towards the daily expected moves, right? We want to look for those, because that would suggest that a very likely thing, if this is curling down into negative territory, would be to take out this low and go make a new one. And if we don't make a divergence there, that can be a problem. So I don't want to be in calls when this or if this happens. Okay, so that would be something to react to, and now we see it on the 30-minute. The other thing that's interesting that could happen for these 30 minutes, and I think I should just mention it real quick, is if we're able to build up to this level and then see that pull back, but maybe it even curls down the 30-minute for a moment, but just rips right back up. We still want to be aware of higher lows, because higher lows are a great way to take back the 5. So we will be watching that, but now we're aware of some good rejections on the 30-minute for the Qs, good rejections for the 2 hour for the Qs, and the daily as far as that lower high could come in. So we'll be watching these things during the live show, and that's something we really want to tackle going forward, is looking at those individual stocks that you guys care about. If you guys want to come to the live show tomorrow and have me check something out, more than happy to do so. Now, the last thing I really wanted to talk about was volatility. Now, ultimately, the daily scale is up, 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 up. And so when you're looking at this, you go, well, this doesn't have divergence. There's no real divergence here. I mean, you have divergence across on your RSI, so maybe that's something I can read into, but all that mess that happened on the MACD, I don't think I can read into it very well, right? We like it to be nice and smooth. But something here would, that if that's the case, then we would look for possibly a higher low for volatility for the VIX, because this MACD is so far away from that center line, just like the SPY. This would be a good thing to pay attention to. If we're going to see reactions in volatility, well, then we're going to most likely see this daily curl back up, even if we see a bunch of days of positivity. Do we have a chance to do that now? So now we need to, just another point, we need to be aware of that lower high. But do we have a chance to curl down this daily MACD right now? Yes, you do, right? This is why we're suggesting that we're going to potentially get an attempted bottom maybe in the next trading session. We're going to watch it because also volatility yesterday was up by more than 10%. It was up 19%, and we did not get, if you see on the right side of your screen, we did not get that update for the SPY. So that means that going into tomorrow, we have an 85% chance to see an up day in the SPY. Isn't that crazy? While we're seeing reversal signals in those individual stocks and a reversal signal that just doesn't look as good on the SPY. So very interesting, but you do notice here that there are triple divergences here for the RSI on volatility. You have one flat divergence at the top, which is suggesting we need to be aware for that 2-hour trap, right? We see the gap right here. So if we react on the 2-hour and turn back up, we might have a lot of room here. So we want to be aware if we're going for that triple quadruple dip down at this point. And then we'll pay attention to divergence, because if that divergence isn't being created, it's very likely that, yeah, we're potentially seeing a crash at that point, okay? So you want to treat that 2-hour, if the 2-hour curls up and curls back down, you want to treat it very seriously. You are at risk of losing levels that can drop you down pretty damn significantly. So you're hoping to see that divergence, because that would be a nice trade setup. Something here is interesting. That 2-hour did curl down with the double top from the 30-minute. Very, very nice. The 30-minute is suggesting that, hey, lower is most likely the answer. But if we're not seriously giving up this 5 and the 2-hour starts to curl back up, we could see that come in right now. We could see another dip down in the market, right? We have more data. But ultimately, if we're going to catch a big bounce here, then I really want to use the VIX to say, okay, the VIX is telling me we could get a big bounce tomorrow. If we actually base out and head to the upside, do I need to be aware of a lower high? And the VIX is overall saying yes at this point. So now we're aware of some cool things, right? We're aware of the fact that, hey, can buyers take control here? Do they have the ability to take control? And it seems a lot of the 2-hour signals on individual stocks and even the SPY are suggesting that they can take control. The individual stocks are more so saying they can take control, while the SPY and the Qs are saying, we're lagging behind a little bit. We still might need to make that big 2-hour floor to head to the upside. Okay, so that's something we can be aware of. Then how high could the SPY go? If it does see that big curl up and the daily curls up, do we need to be aware of a lower high? The answer is yes. I mean, according to the VIX and the positioning of these MACDs, and the fact that we just made that new low, we want to be aware of a lower high. But we are most likely going to see 2-hour signals that tell us when that lower high will come in. And I'm going to be paying attention to that up towards these areas of 594 to 600 pretty much. So that's something we're watching there. And then lastly, how would these things fail? And that's what we went over. We saw how the 30-minute could fail in the short term. We saw how the 2-hour could fail in that 2-hour move. And we want to be aware if the 30-minute goes up, right? This could all happen too, right? This market's been crazy. So you literally can turn up, turn back down, create that floor, turn up on a 2-hour, and then turn right back down again to make that 2-hour floor. And we could spend a lot of time down here before we're able to base out. Very interesting to me that implied volatility just keeps picking up and picking up. Usually around this time, you'll start to see those actually subside and get a little tighter, right? Just a little bit tighter. That way something unexpected could happen. But it seems people are positioned in a way that's causing some big implied volatility. And we just want to be aware that these things do have reversal signals and they do have the ability to bounce. And now we're also aware of how those bounces could fail. So really, when we look back on this video that I've made today, it should be an opportunity to be like, I am prepared for almost anything. I am literally prepared for almost anything. And if I just don't do anything crazy with the amount of money that I have and understand how this could fail, understand how high this could get, I should have an easy way to manage risk and trade like water. And that's the overall goal of this channel, is showing decision making that allows you to continue to trade like water, which is something very, very good as a trader. And it's something we do on this channel. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. I've had to make it a couple times because the boys keep barking, so hopefully you appreciate it because it's taken me forever. But I wanted to make sure to give you something that really answers a lot of the questions you may have. And if you have more questions, please bring them to the live show in the morning, because we are going to talk about this. People start to go nuts when we get outside of monthly expected move. People start to go nuts when we get outside of a weekly expected move. And you're at both of those moments right now. So I understand that this market has been crazy, but if you just come it back down, bring those emotions back down to to neutral. We can formulate a plan with any kind of price action that has a look here and understand, hey, this has high potential to see an upside move, but this is how it would fail and how I would manage risk. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you guys for liking and subscribing. You guys are fantastic. I look forward to streaming with you guys tomorrow morning. Peace out.